I seen the Sphinx breathing, standing next to heathens, devoured by seed and locusts, ejected from the zenith. The body parts of God, Mother Earth received a penis, like Zeus to Venus, Osiris to Isis. When wired to polarities, you couldn't splice this. Original right knowledge, try to rewrite this. You're forced to speak in tongues, far and away your heritage from. Begin to absorb anything above and under the sun.
Why does it matter? Why does it matter? How does this help us with the problems we're facing today? What good is this for us today? Why does it matter? People always ask that. There's always someone in the crowd that asks that. Whenever the topic of black history or ancient black civilizations comes up, like, why does it matter? What good is that today? How does it help us today? Why does that matter? And that's a simple question to answer. Matters for a number of reasons. One is for perspective. So you have to know the past in order to understand the present, in order to build the future. If you don't know your past, then you don't have a perspective to which to judge your present by. If you look at ancient black civilizations, like Egypt and Nubia, these African civilizations, you then have a picture of what we as black people, what we would do, or what we are like when we are left to our own devices, or when we are the dominant class. So when you compare that to the downtrodden state we're in today, you can look at them as a side by side and realize that something has happened to us, something has been done to us. It's not the state that we're in now is not our natural state. We have been altered into this. When you know your history, you cannot be influenced by the negative images of black people that we see and we're constantly bombarded with everywhere we go in this country. You basically become impervious to it. It doesn't work on you. You cannot, to a person who knows the history, who knows that in black civilizations we were dealing with higher sciences and higher arts, you cannot sell that person this image of black people not wanting to do anything but smoke weed, sell drugs, and pimp women. You can't sell that image. That image does not work. It cannot be given to a person who is aware of their past, because they will be able to recognize it as artificial. If a person does not know this, you can sell them that image. You can have them actually believe that this is how black people inherently are. And that's a very malicious program or image to send to people. It's designed that way for completely malicious purposes, because if you believe that's how you inherently are, you will perpetuate that state of being. You will perpetuate these negative attributes, because you will think that is what you are supposed to do. I remember back after Hurricane Katrina, you had people talking about when they had to put all the refugees, I guess they were calling them, I don't know what they were calling them, all the people who had lost their homes, and they had to evacuate them, and they put them in the Superdome. And they were talking about the crime in the Superdome. And they were saying things like, if you put all these black people together, they'll turn anything into a ghetto, or they'll run any neighborhood or area they're into the ground. And it's funny, because when you look at historically what black people have done, when we formed our own civilization, we were one of the first. We were one of, if not the forefather of civilization. We had science, we had math, we had arts, we had philosophy. We had very high culture. So if we will quote unquote turn something into a ghetto, then something must have been done to us to change us from our default state into this state that we're in now, to where it becomes perpetuating, to where we will bring our neighborhood or our area down, which is not necessarily, even though they're over exaggerating, and they're taking and they are presenting a false image when they say that. When you know that the state, this downtrodden state that we're in, is artificial, that it's artificially created, you can then take steps to combat it and correct it. But so long as you think it's natural, you're never going to be able to fight against it, because you're not even going to be aware that there's something to fight against. You're just going to think that this shit is normal. But this is not normal at all. This is something that is being actively done to us to make us like this. This is not a natural progression. It is not something that naturally occurred due to our some kind of character flaw on our part, like they try to sell to us. That's not even close to being the case. This is the result of a systematic assault on us from a physical to a psychological standpoint. But you can't really see that if you don't know your history, because they're not going to come out and tell you this. The people that are doing this to us are not going to come out and tell us that they're doing this. It's something that you have to be able to see for yourself and acknowledge yourself. And if you don't know your history, you can't do that, because if this is all you know, then you're just going to think that's the way it's supposed to be. And another reason the history is important is because history repeats itself. You don't have to just go to Kemet or any ancient African civilization to compare where we should be or where we could be versus where we are. You can just look at just modern American history. If you look at Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, there you have a self-sustained black city, a black community, self-sustained. They had high commerce, they had trade, they were well off. They had a community full of well off black people doing their own thing and prospering. And then what happens? They come in, this sparked over a little incident, they come in and they destroy it. They're burning it down, they're looting, the military gets involved, and they destroy that city. They put these people, these black people who are prospering in this economic system, prospering one day, and then almost overnight, they were out on the streets with nothing but the clothes on their back, just like that. Not because of their own shortcomings or because they couldn't do what they needed to do, but because an external force came in and destroyed it for them. It brought down what they were doing. So these people had their city, had their lives dramatically changed for the negative, changed for the worse. Now their children are going to grow up in this newly created poverty that they should not have been growing up in, and they're going to perpetuate that even further. And then people removed from this are going to look at the state. They're not going to look at the cause, because they're not going to know the cause of it. They're just going to say, "Oh well, black people, we can't handle it. We're inept. We're just sorry people." That's going to be the image that's going to be sold to us to explain our state. Whereas, if you know the history, you would know why these people were in that condition. These people were not impoverished because they couldn't figure out the system, or because they were lazy, or whatever other bullshit explanation they give for why black people suffer in this country as we do. But without a knowledge of the history of what happened before, you can't compare that picture. You can't figure out, you can't put the pieces together to understand why you're in the situation that you're in, and what steps and moves you have to make to better that situation. So that's why it's very important to know your history. It's very important to know and understand these these ancient black civilizations, because they're important to you today. They affect you today. Your knowledge of them affects you today.